Welcome to Christian Detachment, What, Why, and How. I'm Connie Rossini. In this short video, we're going to talk about what Christian detachment is, why it's necessary for us to practice it, and how we can begin to practice detachment. We'll start with what detachment is not. Christian detachment does not mean aloofness or coldness toward other people. It's also not Gnosticism, which sees the world as somehow evil and refuses to interact with the world or sees the world as an illusion. Christian detachment does not mean pretending that the world of the senses, what we see, taste, touch, hear, is not pleasing to us. Rather, when we speak about detachment in a Christian sense, we're speaking about overcoming our disordered attachments. That adjective disordered is really important. It literally means out of order. We don't want anything, whether it's physical or spiritual, whether it's a thing or a person, to interfere with our relationship with God, to be put on the same plane as God, or to be a priority higher than God in our lives. Fundamentally, detachment is a response to God's love. God loves us first, and then as we begin to love Him, we more and more are willing to put aside anything that would keep us from growing in intimacy with Him. It's similar as when two people fall in love. You begin to clear your calendar so that you can spend more time with that person, and your priorities change to match up with what's important to that person. It's the same in our relationship with God. Father Thomas Dubé used to talk about detachment as giving up clinging selfishly to things other than God. Detachment is an attitude. St. Paul says in 1 Corinthians 7, verses 29 to 31, "I mean, brethren, the appointed time has grown very short. From now on, let those who have wives live as though they had none, and those who mourn as though they were not mourning, and those who rejoice as though they were not rejoicing, and those who buy as though they had no goods, and those who deal with the world as though they had no dealings with it. For the form of this world is passing away." Obviously, God does not want us to literally put aside our spouses. For all but a few people, He does not want us to give up all our material goods or to stop interacting with the world. But detachment is instead an attitude of the heart in which none of those things interfere with our relationship with God. Disordered attachment is a kind of idolatry. The greatest commandment, as Jesus told us, is to love the Lord with your whole heart, mind, soul, and strength. If you love something else more than God, or you love something else on an equal plane with God, you are disobeying that commandment, and you have actually made that thing or person into an idol. Jesus also talked about sin being like a log in our eye. We can't see clearly with a log in our eye in order to help other people. Well, this is true not only of sins, but also of attachments. Attachments cloud our vision. They keep us from seeing God and ourselves and His will for us as they really are. We need to have them removed before we can do God's will. Finally, disordered attachments will keep us from seeing God face to face in heaven. Now, that doesn't mean that if you die with some attachments that you will be condemned, but it does mean that you will have to be purged in purgatory. We cannot see God face to face if we desire something more than we desire God's will for us, and more than we love God. So either here on earth, by working on detachment and by accepting God's help, we can be purged from those things that are against God's will, or we will have to be purged from them in purgatory. It is not optional to become detached. How can we begin working on our attachments then? I'll give you just a few brief ways that you can begin. The first way comes from St. John of the Cross. He says that whenever we experience something pleasurable through the senses, we should, as soon as possible, turn our minds and hearts from that thing that gives us pleasure to God. So, for example, when you eat a delicious meal, you can turn your mind to thinking about how good God is. When you see a beautiful sunset, you can think of the beauty of God's face. When you encounter somebody that you love, you could say loving words to God in your heart. In this way, instead of hindering us from coming closer to God, those people and those things are actually helping us. A second way to begin working on your attachments is to get rid of the things that are bad habits. So, for example, if you are addicted to coffee, you could quit drinking coffee cold turkey. In the first few days, it's going to be very difficult, but the longer you go without it, as we all know from giving things up during Lent, the easier it's going to be to say no when you feel like having a cup of coffee. That's true of all of our attachments. Another example could be if you're attached to Twitter. We'll take a fast from it and see how much your desire for it diminishes in just a short time. A third way to work on your disordered attachments is to stop any activity when it no longer glorifies God. For example, if you read before you go to bed, and you read just a little bit until it helps you to calm down so that you're better able to sleep, then you are using material things in a way that's helpful for you in your relationship with God. But if you keep reading for hours, late into the night, you're just indulging yourself at that point. So you have stopped glorifying God by your reading. We want to be introspective enough to identify where that line is between what glorifies God and what's just self-indulgence, and stop before we cross it. Another way to practice detachment is to try to accept your circumstances with peace. No matter what happens in our lives, God has permitted it to happen. And that means that God is somehow weaving that into His plan for you, and you need to trust that His will work itself out and not become agitated and anxious. Finally, if we keep in mind the goal of detachment, it will help us to stay motivated and persevere when detachment gets difficult, which of course at times it will. As we read in Hebrews 12, verses 1 to 2, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and let us run with perseverance the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith." If we remember that intimacy with God through Jesus is the goal, and that disordered attachments are keeping us from that goal, we will more easily throw them off and run the race with all that we've got. God created you to have an intimate union with Himself through His Son. By daily prayer and working on detachment, you can grow continually in that union. Detachment will set you free from your whims, from your moods, and from your circumstances. Everything that God created is good, and everything in the creation can help you to come closer to God as long as you use it rightly in accordance with God's will. If you move even 1 inch toward God by beginning to work on your disordered attachments, God will move a mile towards you. He will help you and carry you towards your goal, intimacy with the Holy Trinity. I hope you enjoyed this video. As you can imagine, there's a whole lot more to detachment than what we were able to say in these 10 minutes. Would you like to learn more? During this Lent, I'm going to be offering my first ever video course called Nothing Shall I Want, Peace Through Detachment. Every week, I will release 2 lessons, beginning with the first Monday of Lent and going through Holy Week. Each lesson will contain short videos, 1 short video each, like this one, plus a worksheet that will help you take notes, suggestions for further reading, and questions that you can discuss with other students in a private forum. There will also be 3 quizzes throughout the course to help you review and test what you have learned. Altogether, there will be about 2 hours of video plus the other elements of the lessons. It will be roughly equivalent to a day's retreat. However, unlike a retreat which you try to pack into 1 day, since this course will be spread out over several weeks, it should help it to make a bigger impact on your life. Since the videos will only be about 8 to 10 minutes each, it should be easy to fit them into your busy schedule. You can watch them on your own time. Take each lesson as slowly or as quickly as you like. The cost of this course, for this time only, the introductory course, will be $35. The next time I offer this course, I plan to raise the price to $45. If you can't afford the $35 cost, you can request a scholarship to take the course, and I will offer the opportunity for other students to sponsor you so that you can take the course for free. The scholarships are on a first-come, first-served basis. Click on the link in order to sign up. Registration is open now and will close on Friday, February 28th, the first Friday of Lent, at midnight Central Time. Don't miss this opportunity to grow closer to God through detachment this Lent. I'll see you at the first lesson. God bless you.